there's a really important skill that we understand when we're doing algebra, and that's solving equations that are quadratic. Quadratic means you have an exponent in there which is squared, like this one in the first equation or this in the second equation. So we have to be able to address these, and that's one of the main ideas of beginning high school algebra. So what we're going to do in each of these is a technique called factoring. We've done that before, but we're going to use factoring to find what the solutions are for Q or M in these equations. And we'll start with this first one. I like this one because this is probably the easiest kind of factoring there is and the most often overlooked, especially once you learn more complicated factoring techniques. Everyone seems to forget that a greatest common factor is our easiest kind of factoring that we have. So what's the GCF? It's the thing that you can pull out of each of these terms. In other words, just a Q. I can divide each of those by Q, and what's left over is Q plus 8. And you see, if you were to actually multiply this out, right, you would get your original back. You'd get your Q squared and your 8Q, like that. But we're not trying to multiply it out. What we're trying to do is put it in this parentheses form. Okay, this is my factored form. And then once I have it like this, I set each of those equal to 0. So one of them is Q equals 0. That's a solution right there. Okay, that's the easiest one. And then the next one is Q plus 8 equals 0. Q plus 8 equals 0. And that's only a little bit harder. I just need to get that 8 on the other side, minus 8 from each side. Those are going to cross out. And then my final solution is the result. It's going to be Q equals negative 8. Okay, so that's your two solutions, and the way you would list them in this answer box would be 0, negative 8. That one's done. Now move on to the next one. The way we're going to handle this guy down here, that's a quadratic because it has that squared over the m. The way we're going to handle it is by factoring. But this time the factoring is a little more complicated because there is no GCF. So the technique that we've shown in class is the following. We're going to, multiply, we're going to set up a big X right here, and I'm going to multiply the 1 that's in front of the m and the negative 35 together to get negative 35. And I'm going to take this 2 that's right here in front of the middle term, that m, I'm going to take that 2 and write that down here. And now we play this little puzzle game. What are two numbers that multiply to negative 35? Okay, and sometimes people put a little x in here to remind themselves that that's multiplication. And what are two numbers that add to the positive, to the 2 down there? And you can stick a plus sign there if you want. Well, you can guess around, and sometimes it's not always easy to see. And what I do is I'll set up a little multiplication table and I'll say, okay, what kind of things multiply to negative 35? Well, I've got 1 and negative 35. Great, but they do not add up to 2. Okay, so I might try 2, and nope, that doesn't work. Or 3, and nope, that doesn't work. And eventually I get to 5, and I say, oh, 5 and negative 7. 5 and negative 7 multiply to negative 35, but they add up to negative 2, and that's the wrong sign. So what if we try this? What if we try negative 5 and positive 7? Well, those are nice, because those two numbers right there will add up to positive 2, and they'll multiply to negative 35, so those are the ones I want. Now what we do with that is we rewrite this equation as m squared minus 5m plus 7m minus 35. And if you look at this, let me clear some of this out of the way here and show you exactly what has changed. Instead of plus 2m, now I have minus 5m plus 7m. And hopefully if you take a moment to examine those two things, you'll realize they're exactly the same, because minus 5m plus 7m is plus 2m. Okay, so all I've done is I've rewritten my equation, and now I'm going to do a technique called factoring by grouping, where I take out my GCF from the left, and I take out my GCF from the right. And now I take whatever the common parentheses is right here, and I make that its own parentheses. So that's m minus 5. And I take whatever was the coefficient in front of each of those parentheses, the m and the 7, and I make that its own parentheses. So that's going to be m plus 7. Okay, now let's not forget, we still have an equals 0 over here. That was my original equation, equals 0. So we set each of these things equal to 0, and we get m equals negative 7 and m equals positive 5. When we solve them, just like I did earlier, those are going to be my two solutions for this problem. This was a harder example of factoring, but in both cases, I had to find my factored form before I solved it.